All right, let's get right into it. Today's explainer tackles a massive undertaking, Michael Tsarion's 40-hour lecture series, Origins and Oracles. We're going to be navigating what Tsarion frames as a completely suppressed, underground stream of ancient knowledge. He pulls together comparative mythology, the occult, ancient mysteries, the whole shebang into one sweeping narrative. 40 hours is a lot to digest, I know, but don't worry, we've distilled the absolute core concepts into a clear, visual journey for you today.
So, here is our roadmap for this chronological initiation. We'll hit four main phases. First, echoes of lost civilizations. Second, astro-theology and the goddess. Third, the seven cults of power. And finally, sacred symbolism today. We are tracing a path from the unimaginable deep past right up to the glowing screens you're looking at every single day.
Okay, jumping right into part one, echoes of lost civilizations and the suppressed origins of humanity. Tsarion argues right out of the gate that we need to fundamentally rethink pretty much everything we've been taught about early human history.
And it really all starts with how we define the word myth. You know the standard definition, right? A traditional story, usually about early history or the supernatural. In our modern, super-rational world, we generally just dismiss these stories as a mere fantasy or, primitive superstition. Just early humans trying to make sense of a confusing world without the benefit of science. But this series asks us to hit pause and completely reconsider that baseline assumption. Tsarion actually flips that mainstream view totally on its head. Instead of just writing off myths as works of fiction, he posits that these ancient stories are actually compressed, highly encoded records. Records of real events, real astronomical cycles, and profound ancient knowledge. Think of a myth as like an ancient zip file left behind by our ancestors, just sitting there, waiting for us to extract the true historical data hidden inside.
So, what's in that zip file? Well, in Tsarion's alternative timeline of deep history, fragments of these encoded myths point to a radically different origin story for us. He kicks things off with Era 1, arguing that the lost continents of Atlantis and Lemuria were in fact completely real civilizations. Then, moving into Eras 2 and 3, he introduces this highly controversial idea that early human development was actually shaped by extraterrestrial intervention and deliberate genetic manipulation. Wild, right? And finally, Era 4 sees the rise of a really profound goddess tradition. That brings us to part 2, astro-theology and the celestial blueprint of religion. This is where the night sky itself literally becomes a canvas for human belief.
Now, before any of our modern patriarchal faiths even existed, the series claims there was this deeply rooted goddess tradition, which was heavily tied to early Egyptian divination. And they treated the night sky as the original sacred text. Instead of, reading a physical scroll or a book, ancient peoples read the vast star field itself as a divine, living language. Tsarion breaks down this whole concept of astro-theology into three very distinct steps. Step 1 is the sky as text, just making those initial celestial observations. Step 2 is sidereal mythology, which is where those star movements get dramatized into epic stories about heroic figures and deities. And then, crucially, Step 3, encoded dogma. Over millennia, he claims, these allegorical star myths were eventually taken completely literally by later religions, completely stripping away their original astronomical meaning. To really put that into perspective, Tsarion maps these actual astronomical realities directly onto familiar religious narratives. For example, the literal stories of the life, death, and rebirth of deities? He claims those were originally just ancient attempts to map solar cycles. The grand shifting religious eras tied straight to the precession of the zodiac. Even complex religious dogma, Holy Spirit symbolism, and miracles are traced back to specific stellar alignments. The absolute core argument here is that the religious symbols we take as literal truth today originally just pointed to celestial mechanics.
Moving on to part 3, the seven cults of power and the ancient controllers. Because if this incredible deep knowledge of the stars and our origins really existed, the next logical question is, who is keeping the secrets?
Well, Tsarion introduces what he calls the 7 cults of power. And we're not talking about fleeting, disorganized groups here. These cults dominated and shaped the ancient world over millennia, specifically by hoarding all this esoteric and celestial knowledge. He points to the stellar cult as the most dominant and long-lived of the bunch. According to the series, these elites basically use forbidden knowledge to rule antiquity, actively keeping the rest of the masses in the dark.
And here's where Tsarion makes a pretty chilling claim. He states, the symbols, structures, and powers of the modern world are continuations of forms set down in the deep past. A deep continuity.
He's arguing that these ancient cults never actually vanished. They didn't just die out with the fall of Rome or ancient Egypt, they simply evolved. The hierarchies of that ancient stellar cult seamlessly transitioned into the modern political, corporate, and religious institutions that govern us right now.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 4, Sacred Symbolism Today, and the Modern Subversion. We are coming out of the shadows of antiquity and stepping directly into our highly mediated modern reality.
So if these cults of power really did maintain this deep, unbroken continuity, a super pressing question naturally arises. Where did all this ancient, sacred vocabulary actually go? Like, where do we see these ancient stellar symbols today?
To answer that, Tsarion points out a critical psychological vulnerability that every single one of us shares. The human mind responds to imagery and archetypes significantly faster than to conscious, rational thought. I mean, think about it. Before you can even begin to process a logical argument, a visual symbol has already triggered an emotion deep within your subconscious. The ancient cults knew this, and their modern descendants absolutely know it too. The series argues that this occult vocabulary is literally everywhere. Sacred and occult symbolism is intentionally deployed in modern branding, media, architecture, and politics, specifically to subconsciously shape your perception. These ancient tools have been totally weaponized by modern corporate conglomerates. They're using esoteric symbols to completely bypass our conscious defenses and influence our behavior, all while we remain blissfully unaware of the true origins of the logos we consume every single day. Now, I know that paints a pretty bleak, manipulated picture of the world, but Tsarion doesn't leave us hanging. He does present a path forward. He emphasizes that the solution is to reclaim our self-knowledge, to become acutely aware of the symbolism that bombards us 24/7, and to actively recover the suppressed understanding of our deep origins. The idea is that by decoding these symbols, we actually strip them of their subconscious power over us. It's really all about waking up to the hidden visual language of the world. So after exploring this sweeping alternative history in our explainer today, from the echoes of Atlantis all the way to the weaponization of corporate branding, I want to leave you with this final thought. If our modern world is indeed built on a hidden ancient blueprint, whose symbols are you consuming on your screens today? The next time you turn on your TV or mindlessly scroll through your phone, take a much closer look. You might just recognize the visual echoes of an ancient star cult staring right back at you. Keep questioning everything, and thanks for joining me.